been a few months since Phillip Pounds became the mayor of the city of Isle of Palms, and already he's tackling a lot of issues. I talked one-on-one with the mayor for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook.
Mayor Phillip Pounds, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. It's been, 6 months?
Right.
That's right before election that we last had a conversation.
And of course, I ran into you at the CEO Bank's reception.
You were trying to get in. Yeah.
Can you tell them what happened?
My wife and I are checking in, getting our badges to walk into the CW Gala. And of course, there's Quintin, who everybody knows and everybody, speaks to and talks to. And I told him just to walk in with us, but he didn't. He's a rule follower.
Now looking back, I should have done that. Should have been right in with
It was a well done event, though.
Yeah.
As usual.
Oh yeah.
It was nice to be back together, and not on Zoom or canceled.
Right. Exactly right.
It was nice to have you here in person.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, because there's so much going on here on the Isle of Palms. What's new? What's now?
Yeah. So took office in January, and it has been drinking from a fire hose for sure for the first 4 or 5 months. Most of the first few months, Quintin has been spent working with Mount Pleasant and the Sullivans and Department of Transportation, just and the county park folks have been good partners as well. Just attempting to get in front of the summer crowds and to figure out light timing, personnel, flow, whatever we could do to affect good change for this summer. And again, the county has been a good partner. DOT is helping us, Mount Pleasant, Sullivan's, everybody's been a great partner so far, just from a collaboration standpoint. But we started these conversations like the week I started office, quite honestly, because it's not a surprise that summer's coming.
Yes.
And the traffic's going to be here really already is to a large extent. So that's been a pretty good new focus for this year so far, is just trying to make sure whatever we can control from a traffic flow standpoint that we get in front of it. And like I said, we've had really good partners. Channel 4 has been an awesome partner with Trooper Bob.
Oh, yes.
They put out a website and an app and just for the 4 islands to talk about, parking availability and rules of the beach and where free parking is, where paid parking is. So they just launched, I think Friday actually, their app and website on Channel 4 site to give a little more information to folks that may be leaving Somerville or Monk's Corner or Goose Creek, wherever you say, is it worth it today? Is there a place to park? What's the weather? What are the beach rules? What are the dog rules? So they've been a really good partner as well. So long-winded answer to your question, but that's been the majority of the focus for me the first few months.
Oh, no worries at all, because I was thinking about this beach reach.
Yeah.
How will the city of Isle of Palms approach that?
Yeah, so the beach reach app, I guess this will be their 3rd year that's been in place, and they've continued to add pieces to it, and I think it certainly still serves a purpose because it's been out there a little bit longer than the Channel 4 piece has. But I do think my sense is the Channel 4 app and Trooper Bob work is going to be much more robust, quite honestly, than the Beach Reach app. Just from parking to dog rules to beach rules to plastics to what you can and can't do on each of our islands or on each of our beaches. So I think we'll continue to have both out there for sure and support both financially and informationally. So the more information we can push out for folks to make a better trip for them, the better. So,
speaking of finances, let's talk about public transportation.
Sure.
The beach reach is coming back this year. How much money has the city of Isle of Palms pumped into that?
Yeah. So, and we are excited to partner with Mount Pleasant and Cardo to put that in place again this year. Our piece of that coin is probably in the 10,000-ish range each year. So a very reasonable number from our view, and worth it to attempt to get the ridership up each year. Last year was first year post-pandemic and trying to get word out for it. We're hopeful, between CARTA and others that ridership will increase this year. We'll see how it goes, and make a decision about next year when it gets here. But we're really excited to be able to participate with Mount Pleasant and CARTA this year again.
What was the ridership last year?
It was pretty low. If I remember the numbers right, I want to say, don't quote, you are going to quote me on this, but I want to say it was somewhere in the 400-ish range. It just runs on the weekends during seasons. That's 10, 12 weekends or so. So again, anybody we can get on that bus is one or two less cars that we don't have to have on the island, on any of our islands, that folks that are participating. So it's worth the effort to me to see if we can make it happen and increase ridership.
And what other efforts are you using right now to increase their ridership?
Yeah, so between the county and CARTA, those folks have their social media campaigns to try and push that out this year. I guess we'll start at Labor Day or Memorial Day weekend where the CARTA shuttle will happen. So they're doing some work, probably starting this week, I would guess, to start pushing out from a social media standpoint. The availability of it, when it's happening, how it runs, where it drops off right here on Front Beach for our city. So.
That's amazing. Now, let me go back, because obviously you're collaborating with the town of Mount Pleasant and obviously the town of Sullivan's Island right next door, which I love. How collaborative, how respectful is that relationship?
It's very good.
Okay.
The mayors and I, again, one of the first things I did was reach out to 3 or 4 mayors locally to start a relationship, because it's hard to have your first conversation be a transaction. So it's nice to have a little bit of a relationship with these folks before we get into, hey, can you change the timing of your lights? Can you do this? Can you do that? So it's been between Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Goodwin, Mayor Haney, it's been a really good partnership from my view. And everybody's come to the table with really good ideas, and Mayor Haney really plugged into the Channel 4 piece for us and got that done for us collectively.
Sure.
We talk not weekly, but pretty regularly with the mayors. Just we're all dealing with the same stuff for the most part. So it's been very good and very respectful, Quintin, to your question.
And I'll have Mayor Pat O'Neill and Quintin's close-up scan in July, but let's go to the hard issues. In late April, the Isle of Palm City Council voted to eliminate the committee structure of government that's been in place for almost 70 years and try a workshop form of meeting starting from July 1st to December 31st, combining all of those committee meetings into one, again, to, quote, increase expenditure sheet, obviously, for the transaction of the city's business. What was the transaction of this city's business before this decision?
Yeah, so again, we had 6 committees, and city council was split up onto those 6 committees. So, from my view, starting again in January, it was, you would have a consultant or somebody do a presentation to a committee, which was 3 council members.
Right.
Then they would most likely, that consultant would have to come do a presentation to the Ways and Means, because it most likely meant money. Then they would have to come to city council to do a presentation. So you had 3 spots where, and again, that's just talking about using an external presentation, a consultant of some type, where I really saw I wouldn't say waste, but the inefficiencies from running a committee structure was at our staff level. I mean, those folks spend a lot of time, about 6 to 10 hours per meeting, prepping, attending, and following up for that meeting. So take the low number. So 6 hours times 6 committee meetings a month. That was a lot of time spent administratively that our staff could be spending strategically, quite honestly. And the same thing from a council standpoint. Committee structure forces council members to be in the detail and the operations of the city, when a city council should be focused on policy setting decisions, strategic initiatives for the city itself and our residents, and not so much on the operational aspects of the city. So we're going to try it for 6 months, to your point. And what I'm hoping we will find out of that is a much more efficient way to handle the city's business. Certainly for our staff, and I'm hopeful for council as well. Everything will still be live streamed. Every spot will still have a spot for citizens' comments, so they can still come and sign up and make comments to council. So we're not trying to go behind closed doors, or we're not trying to hide anything. All these will be live streamed and out in the open. The workshops, again, to me, are more about collaborative thinking and discussion. When you're in committees and council meetings, you're bounded by Robert's Rules of Orders, and there's a way things have to happen. There are just some issues that lend themselves to much more discussion in a workshop environment, as opposed to how fast can I get through this committee meeting, quite honestly. So again, I want to try it for 6 months, and I'm glad our council saw the need for that. If it doesn't work, we'll keep tweaking it over this 6 months. If people want to revert back to the committee structure, we'll wind up doing that too, Quintin. But to me, it was worth a try to see if we could help from an efficiency standpoint, particularly at our staff level.
But how does a council eliminate council meetings? I'm just curious, what exactly is that mechanism?
Well, we're not eliminating council meetings, so we'll have 2 meetings a month. One will be a workshop, which in essence will take the place of all the committee meetings. So that's where the conversations happen about getting to a policy decision, if you will. So probably the second Tuesday of the month we'll have a workshop. The fourth Tuesday of the month will continue to be our council meetings, the more formal structure. So all we're eliminating are the committee meetings, not council meetings in any way. If that makes sense.
How does your council eliminate these committee meetings? What type of mechanism did you all go and approach before to happen, making this happen?
Yeah, so our research was done with the Municipal Association of South Carolina to see what other municipalities were doing. Not something they track like they do some other things, but their conversations with us were about 80% of municipalities use a workshop structure as opposed to a committee structure. So again, to me, we're just getting more in line with current practices and trends with other municipalities across the state. So again, we're going to try it. It's a trial period. We'll see what happens.
What other trends are you seeing in that particular route?
Yeah. So again, with conversations with the MASC, the Municipal Association, one of the other things we'll be taking up this month is to reduce our number of council members. So we're at 9, which very, very few cities across the state, 271 cities across our state, I think less than 2% have more than 9 or more. So about 98% of the cities across the state have 5 or fewer, 6 or fewer council members. And again, this will be something the residents will vote on. The city council will just be voting to put it on a referendum for this fall, potentially, that would let the citizens vote on whether they want to reduce city council or not. Now, 9 is, and again, sitting in the mayor's seat for 5 months. It is extremely time consuming to try and get the other people up to speed, information to them, make sure they understand it, and then get down the path. And we're out of line with other cities across our state of any size. Charleston has more, big city, but again, most cities have significantly fewer than what we have. Most are 7 or fewer in total, counting the mayor.
Now, how outdated were you all with this mechanism that you had in place before this decision?
The workshops?
Yes.
Yes. Workshops, to your point, they've been around since, committees have been around since the city started. The 9 council members have been around since the city started. So you can imagine some of these slings and arrows I may be getting for wanting to change things after 70 years. But to me, it's about, not change just for the sake of change. It's really about what are other municipalities doing? And how can we be more efficient? We have a small staff, about 92 people that are their staff, and the majority of those are public safety, obviously. So our staff's small, and we have to be really smart about how we use them. So again, to me, reducing council, looking at going to this workshop structure, Quintin, tries to create the efficiencies for our staff and our form of government that makes it better.
Now, there was also a discussion that the city should form a committee of council members to bring forth, obviously, recommendations to the Phillip Council. What recommendations have you seen or heard thus far?
Well, we haven't implemented anything. And I think that conversation was around, once we get to the workshop structure in July, if there is a topic that comes up that needs much more detailed analysis than we may be able to do in a workshop structure, we might form a task force of certain council members to go away and study it and come back to the next workshop and have a conversation with us. So to be determined, to your question, because I think there will be things that we just can't discuss in a 15 or 20 minute time frame that we'll need people to go do some research on, or our planning commission certainly plays into that. They're studying a couple of things for us right now that are about ready to come to council for some conversation and policy. So that to your question, that'll be to be determined on what that may look like or feel like, or what topic it may cover if we need to form a task force.
Now, what are those things that the planning commission talking about right now that's coming to the Phil Council?
So the one that's being teed up actually today, they're meeting, is short-term rental conversation, which every barrier island, every city across the country, it seems like, is struggling with this, really across the world, when you do some of your own research to see, what's going on from an investment property standpoint, from a short-term rental standpoint. We're fortunate here on the Isle of Palms. Right now, to me, we have a really good balance. Full-time residents, second homes, and short-term rentals. When you get to the short-term rental conversation, it's typically about livability and enforcement of the rules and regulations you have on the books today. And again, we're fortunate enough on the island, we have about 3 or 4 really good management companies of some good size that are really good partners with the city and do a nice job, in my opinion, of enforcing the rules and being responsive to renters that may be a problem. When you go to the VRBO or Airbnb world, you don't have that management company oversight necessarily. So what our planning commission is most likely coming forth with is some type of zoned capping mechanism, if you will. And I don't know that it's coming, but that's what they're talking about today. What's on public record today is dividing the island up into zones. Some of our zones have very heavy rental current. Palm Boulevard, Ocean Boulevard, Wild Dunes. Some of our spots that are more residential, like Forest Trail, don't have much rental integration to them right now, and do we want to protect that? And that's the balance, Quintin, that will eventually come to council this month or next around what do you want to do? Do you want to cap it? Do you want to do nothing? Do you want to zone it and protect the residential communities like they are today? Do you want to kind of let Palm and our commercial districts and Wild Dunes just kind of let them keep doing their thing, because that's really what those were built for to a large extent. So that's the latest that the planning commission's dealing with. That'll be coming to council most likely next month from a recommendation standpoint.
Okay, could Wild Dunes put caps on rentals as their own committee, but actually outside the gate should be something the council gets the island's residents input on?
I think what is on the table right now is to, again, zone the whole island and create enough buffer across the whole island that, so today we have about 1,400 rental licenses on the island. Probably about half of that, Quintin, sits in Wild Dunes because of the condo communities that are there, which makes sense. So, what we've talked about in that 1,400 has come down over the last few years and have been turned into second homes or primary residences, which is great.
Right.
So the conversation has been, if your rental licenses are coming down over the last few years, is there an issue you're really trying to solve, or is it really kind of the time to do it because you wind up putting your cap up here, for example, or somewhere 20 or so percent over your current numbers, so that potentially you may never hit your cap. 20% is a pretty decent number. If you're sitting in one of the zones that might have 800 houses, so 20% is a pretty decent number. And if we're creating enough space that says here's where we are today, and here's where our cap's going to be, it may never be an issue. But if you were putting that cap, pretty close to your current numbers today, then that would be a whole different conversation to me. But if we keep enough buffer to say, keep doing what you're doing, if you're a current rental license holder, but we'd like to make sure here's our ceiling that we might like to say from a livability residential mixed community, this is as high as we ever want to go with it, based on numbers that we're seeing today. And again, that gives you that flexibility to say new people coming in, new buyers coming in, where you are today, you could keep ratcheting, they could keep getting rental license and keep ratcheting up until you ever get to the cap. And again, only time will tell if that cap will ever be touched or not. But the distance we have between the current and the future, based on what the Planning Commission is talking about right now, I think would give us years worth of flexibility to deal with short-term rentals. And again, I don't know if that's what's coming to council, but we'll see what comes out of Planning Commission.
Now, how much are short-term rentals decreasing on the island?
So we were probably at a peak pre-COVID. I think the number is somewhere around 1,600, Quintin, and now we're roughly 1,400 rental license. So again, a pretty significant decrease based on those numbers, but again, overlay COVID on top of that. People could work and school from anywhere they wanted to. Well, a lot of people chose to do it here, which I don't blame them because we're in paradise, as you know. So that's been, so I don't want to say it's artificial, from a change standpoint because of COVID, but it's real that our numbers have decreased over the last 5 years. Pick a number, that we've gone from about 1,600 to about our 1,400 number currently. And again, most of those have been turned into second homes or primary residence, which is great.
Now, how many of those homes have turned into second homes and primary residences?
Well, out of the 200, it's probably a half and half mix, quite honestly. That's either become a second home or a primary residence, if that makes sense.
Now, how much will the short-term rentals decrease in the next 5 years?
That's the magic question.
Okay.
So if you've decreased a couple of hundred in the last 5 years, and you fast forward the clock to say, because really our numbers been pretty steady pre-COVID. So if we stay at the 1,400 number, Quintin, then to me it really becomes about enforcing the rules that we have on the books to make sure those residential communities and anybody that lives or rents or second homes here, I shouldn't have to be concerned as a homeowner that I've got a zoo going next to me, with 20 people and cars everywhere. I mean, that's the livability that we're trying to balance, and we have rules on the books, to take care of that. And I think we just need to be better enforcers of what sits on our books today, because we have people counts, caps, we have car count caps, we have noise ordinances. So you've got some boundaries in place today that are attempting to get at that livability of people that are second homeowners, full-time residents, or other renters. So we've got some rules that sit there today, and I think between whatever's going to come out of our planning commission, I think we just have to have a better eye towards the enforcement of what rules that of the ordinances that sit on our books today.
I want to get back to that in just a second, but how many homeowners are actually in favor of a cap of obviously short-term rentals?
Mm-hmm. And that's a great question, because if I'm a full-time homeowner today, I don't have a number to your question. My inbox is certainly filling up as this is getting out there that our planning commission is meeting today. And most of the email traffic that's happened so far are from people that are short-term rental owners. They want that. They want to protect it. They want to make sure they have it, and they will have that. I mean, if you have a current license, you're good. And if you're in one of these zones that we're dubbing commercial district, like Front Beach, for example, in that condo community, it's not even in the cap conversation. They can go 100% rentals because that's what it was built for. Just like some areas of Wild Dunes will be the same way. They won't have a cap because that's what it was really built for. So I don't have a number to your question about how many residents are for or against a short-term rental. It kind of depends on which side of the fence you're sitting on. We've had a rental house next to us over the years, off and on, and it's been great because it's been families and it's been fine. I know there are others that haven't necessarily had that experience. So again, trying to balance the livability and make sure everybody can coexist with the right rules in place with the right enforcement. So
now, but some on city council, mayor, say that they want, quote, to fast track the cap on rentals to the May council meeting due to a, quote, sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. What exactly is that urgency?
Yeah. And I think, Quintin, the urgency, not to speak for other council members, but sure. My sense of the urgency is, some of what you've seen go on in other parts of the country and other parts of the world is you've had these private equity firms come in and buy up a lot of properties, and those are absolutely short-term rentals without sometimes local management oversight, like some of our big management companies on the island give us. That's the what-if concern to me, Quintin, and it hasn't happened on the IOP yet. We haven't had those private equity firms, those big investment firms come in and buy up properties. So we've been fortunate, but once they do, then you're behind the 8 ball. So to me, this cap with the cushion is potentially a way to give you, to make everybody happy, sure, to some extent. Now, the other thing I'm finding is you can't make everybody happy. But if we can create that cap with the buffer, it allows new homeowners to come in and current homeowners, if they decide to rent, it gives you that buffer for them to be able to do that without and it kind of protects you from the fear of the investment firms coming in and buying up a lot of properties, if that makes sense.
But do you have the space if they were to come here hypothetically?
they would be buying existing homes for sure, because there are very few lots left, open lots left on the island, and the ones that are left there for a reason. They're difficult to build, or a small building envelope, or a lot of big historic trees on them. So it would absolutely be buying up existing properties, Quintin. That is the fear.
How many existing homes do you have right now on the island?
There's probably about 4,000 units, a number of condos, obviously.
Right. And you talk about those historical trees. How many of those are you working to save right now?
Everyone we can. There are some pretty good ordinances in place that protect those trees of varying sizes. So it's a balance for sure, to make sure we protect the environment as well at the same time. But again, there aren't that many lots left on our island to build on. So I think the work that our zoning folks and planning commission and councils have done before have done a pretty good job of protecting what we can from a canopy standpoint.
Now, do you have enough livability officers to take care of this current issue?
And therein lies the other $1 million question, and the balance of a good use of tax dollars to you can't always staff up for the peak of summer when we have 20,000 visitors a day. When we have 4,000 residents to begin with.
Right.
So, some of what we have in the budget for next year, Quintin, to your exact comment, is an increase in enforcement officers. We're actually officer. I don't think we have more than one in the budget right now, but that's the middle ground that's hard to thread to me, to walk on to some extent. Is you don't want to be overburdened as a police force to go out and always be telling people no. I mean, it's not the type of environment you want to have either. But there does have to be a fine line walked somewhere along the way that's going to say we have rules in place for a reason, and we're trying to protect the residential nature of parts of the island, or where it needs to be on the island. And again, some of that's going to come through enforcement, and I do believe that's going to create a staffing need for us more than just what we have in the budget for next year. So again, long-winded answer to your question. I think that is the next hurdle for us to jump, is what is the right mix for enforceability officers to make sure whatever our residents' concerns are, that we're addressing those from an enforcement standpoint.
And what would be the typical, how much would it cost you all to actually have another livability officer?
Mm-hmm. So this would not be a badge gun carrying person, so they wouldn't go through the academy, and we wouldn't have that expense for them. So those beach service officers or livability officers are probably in the $25 an hour range, somewhere in there. So if we could hire somebody seasonally, Memorial Day or Labor Day, this is the bulk of our rental. I mean, we certainly have it in the off season too, Quintin, but that's the bulk of where our rentals happen. And if we could make sure we were staffed there appropriately, just like we do with our other part-time people in the summer, for ticket enforcement and other parking and things, to me, that's probably the place we walk before we run, and figure out how do we take care of that Memorial Day to Labor Day time frame and make sure quality of life is good for everybody, renters, part-time, full-time residents. So again, that's the $1 million question to me. I'm not sure what that mix is yet, but we're adding a position in our new budget year specifically focused on enforceability for short-term rentals.
Speaking of which, how many parking spaces are available now to non-residents?
1,701. Quintin, how about that?
And how many parking spaces were actually available before the 2015 plan went into effect?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, it would have been something more than that, for sure. But when the 2015 parking plan went into place, we again trying to protect the residential parts of our island and keep parking as close to the beach as possible for our visitors, and as close to beach access paths as possible. The bulk of our parking sits here at Front Beach between the county park and what the city owns, but free parking up and down Palm and parts of Ocean, some of the avenues there. So again, we're at 1,700 plus parking spots. About half of those are free, half of those are paid between the county and city lots. So we feel like we offer a lot of parking, and in good proximity to the beach for facilities if people need them.
Now, how much money did the city make last year with paid parking?
City probably took in 800,000, rough numbers, last year. And again, those are 2 lots right by our front beach area. Those are the only paved spots that the city owns. The county, you pay, but that's a different pocket, obviously. So rough numbers, it's about where we were last year.
Now, has the city actually provided DHEC and obviously the Department of Transportation a copy with the number of parking spaces available now for non-residents?
Absolutely. They know exactly where we sit from a number standpoint and location and the mix of what's paid and not paid.
Now, how much funding has the island received from state for beach renourishment for the past 3 years?
Our last renourishment was in 2018. And I think it was a rough number, $20 million project. And off the top of my head, I can't recall. Some of it was made up from the city, Wild Dunes, state, and federal contribution. I don't know the mix right off the top of my head.
And what are those current contributions from the federal and the state?
Well, ongoing, nothing until we have another project. So our last one was 08 was our last one. 2018 was our next one. I don't know if we're going to get 10 years out of the one from 2018 or not, just due to some of the erosion and stuff that's happening. But so there's not ongoing contributions. It's just kind of at the time of transactions when those contributions happen.
Well, let me jump right into it. What is the inventory of existing conditions of your beaches?
So, good question. We just had that done. We do it every 18 months or so around we have a consultant come in and look at the erosion, and the same consultant that was involved in the 2008 and the 2018 renourishment. So they know exactly how much sand was added to our beaches. We're holding up really well. There are certainly some hot spots based on what's going on in the ocean from a shoal standpoint and how erosion happens around it. But all in all, the island's pretty healthy from a beach standpoint. Probably our current hotspot is Front Beach, which is where everybody sits to a large extent from a day trip standpoint. So that may be something we'll have to attack. But again, it's only 4 years since our last renourishment. Hoping, we'll get into mid-2020s before we have to do something. But, the city has a good chunk saved up, and the Wild Dunes community has a good chunk saved up for beach renourishment. The state's certainly flush with cash with all the infrastructure money that's flying around, so hopefully we'll be in a good spot.
How much do you all have, and how much does the Wild Dunes resort have?
Yeah. So city has about just under $6 million right now in the beach renourishment fund. And that gets funded through ATAX type money. So that's a decent number. Wild Dunes, not the resort, but the community, has about $6 million as well. And that's funded through some of the real estate transfer pieces that happen when transactions happen within the resort or within the community. So each have about $6 million sitting for beach renourishment funds.
Now, what is the city's beachfront structural inventory?
Make sure I understand your question. So this consultant just finished, they divide up the island into zones as well and look at, regions or sections of the island. So again, most of the beach front is in really good shape. Even Front Beach is in good shape. It's just probably the hottest area right now from an erosion standpoint. Don't foresee anything, in the next few years. We might go ahead and start the permitting process in 2 to 3 years because it's good for 5 years once you have that permit. So in anticipation of, something would probably need to happen within that 10-year time frame up to 2028. We'll probably go ahead, maybe 24 or 25, go ahead and get permitting done, and again, which would hold us for 5 years and, for our next big beach renourishment.
Now, what is the beachfront drainage plan?
So that is an ongoing. So we were finishing up a comprehensive drainage master plan for the whole island. So we've just kicked off a couple of projects that have been in the works for a number of years at 30th Avenue and 36th Avenue. So those are 2 huge projects that have really, the one on 30th just started this past week, and that'll finish up this fall along with the 36th, and then we've got the 41st that will wind up doing. So those are 3 big outfalls out to the intercoastal that we're spending, probably $4 to $5 million on to help get the water off the island faster. What this development plan, or island-wide development plan will do, we'll kind of start identifying the next hotspots that we need to work with. There's a project that we're working with DOT at the end of 25th that they're helping us with currently, in addition to 30th and 36th and 41st. So we have about $500,000 in our budget every year for what we term smaller drainage projects, and that might be, something that affects 10 houses over here or 12 houses over here. So that's ongoing. But these big ticket items, we're either saving up for, getting grants for, state assist for, or just out of our own pocket to take care of. So we've been, in my opinion, pretty proactive from a drainage standpoint. It is a constant battle, as you know, living on a barrier island, to keep water off as fast as we can from a stormwater or drainage standpoint. And then the high tides take on other paths to have.
And the batteries are running a little low, but I want to get to some other issues. But speaking of getting rid of things, let's talk about the discussion, obviously, of regulating gas-powered leaf blowers. This ordinance will have a direct impact not only on our landscape businesses, but on businesses that utilize gas-powered tools or generators. Why is City Council considering an ordinance against a specific type of lawn equipment?
Yeah. And I don't think that was going anywhere from my personal opinion. It was just a discussion item on our last council meeting. And again, our police folks are actually working with us on this one around just looking at the current noise ordinances that's on our books. Whether it's amplified music or construction noise or whatever, Quintin on the island. So it was just time to kind of look at it again. And this discussion item came up last month around leaf blowers and gas-powered equipment. Again, I don't think that's going anywhere personally, but the intent was just trying to control the noise level.
Well, let me ask you this. Why not make a time-specific noise ordinance of all types of motorized lawn equipment?
Which is a great conversation.
Okay.
And, to me, kind of back to this enforceability conversation, the Wild Dunes area has time-specific noise where you can start construction, end construction, or no construction on Sundays, for example. And, again, that's great for people that want to live in Wild Dunes. The rest of the island's a little looser, from a noise construction standpoint, but that certainly is an option to your point. Could you say you can operate things from 7 to 7 or 8 to 8 or whatever the number might be? And something may come to City Council at some point, in a noise ordinance that may have something like that, a time frame or more specificity on when you can use as opposed to an outright ban of certain types of equipment.
Okay. Would something similar to the construction noise ordinance be a better idea?
Maybe. Okay. And I know Sullivan's has looked at that as well, and they've kind of set aside. I think their landscape community, stood up in revolt. It's like, the technology is not there on the E-type, electric type equipment. So they looked at it off and on over the years and haven't done anything with it. Again, it was just a conversation at the council last month. So I think we're in the early stages of that conversation, a little bit further down the road on other noise ordinances, to your point.
Well, I understand that from reports that I read, the city is starting to regulate noise by decibels in the first step to allegedly eliminate live music. But the city, to be fair, says that they're not going to eliminate this. Who is paying for these decibel meters, their maintenance, and obviously the calibration testing?
Yeah, so our police have those now. I mean, it's not an expensive proposition to have a handheld decibel meter, quite honestly. So again, you think about walking before you run type standpoint. What's current noise level today? What does it need to be? What's reasonable? Again, from a livability standpoint. City has zero desire to get rid of music, live music, amplified music of any kind, but how do we balance when you think about our Front Beach area where some of that takes place? You've got condos around there, you've got short-term rentals around there. When you buy a Front Beach area, you kind of know what you're buying into from a action and people and packed standpoint as well as noise. So again, you're trying to balance all constituents to make sure you can get a happy medium somewhere. So we're fairly early in the noise ordinance conversation, so not sure where that will wind up.
And speaking of going back to obviously the beach renourishment projects and obviously your comprehensive plan, what are your long-term, short-term, shoreline change rates?
Certainly not an engineer, but when I look at the graphs that they provide us, and I'm pointing to my desk, it's sitting right there. Again, the island's in good shape. I think we've had so much focus, Quintin, on the beachfront side of our island. was at a South Carolina Beach Advocates meeting earlier this year. And, you know, a lot of the conversation that took place was about, don't forget about the backside of the island, you know, and oyster reefs and, you know, natural barriers and such. And it was wasn't eye-opening for me, but just a good reminder to say, beachfront's important, without a doubt. It's our bread and butter and lifeblood to some extent. But so is the backside of the island, with the intercoastal and the creek system. So again, you know, everything's based on our current report, the island's in good shape. We just have to stay at it, you know, whether it's a continuing monitor, whether it's a continuing renourishment when needed. But I think we've been pretty good stewards of our island from that standpoint.
The Alva Palms Marina parking agreement reached. The Island Eye News reports that two major parties in the ever-evolving and internally complicated parking saga at the Alva Palms Marina have apparently come to agreement. Though one of them says ambiguity, that is, remains, and the other doesn't care to comment on the particular situation according to the Island Eye News. I know the city of the Alva Palms, meanwhile, has abandoned its role as a mediator, claiming 16 parking spots reserved for the island residents and leaving the soon-to-be opener Island 71 restaurant. And the Alva Palms Marina manager, Brian Bergen, basically says to work out the details between the two parties, obviously. Any state or federal tax dollars or incentives involved with this development?
No. I mean, we use tourism money to help maintenance some of the docks.
How much is that?
Well, we just spent about $5 million on the docks down there, and some of that was certainly tourism money. You know what's going on, so hopefully that our new restaurant will open. The new restaurant will open. Just happens to be on city property.
Right.
We don't have ownership,
right.
Obviously, but so that will open hopefully in the next week or so. They've done a great job. It looks fantastic. They're going to knock the ball out of the park. You know, parking's their concern. There's a 300-seat restaurant. And, you know, we tried to bring the parties together. We didn't try. We did bring the parties together to get to this agreement, which we finally did. And I think we're, you know, that restaurant gets open. We just need to see what the next step is that we need to do. You know, that whole area could be reconfigured. The whole marina, 5 acres, could be reconfigured to have a better parking structure and layout. Well, that's a big ticket item that is not short term by any stretch, but that's the long term view, is to somehow fix how ingress, egress, trailer parking, restaurant parking, how all that happens. So, but again, that's a long-term view, Quintin. You know, short term, you may have also seen in the Island Eye that we've been asked by Brian Berrigan, current leaseholder, to assign his leases to a new marina manager. So we're in negotiations with those folks right now to make that happen potentially. So Brian's leases continue through 2045, so that's what this particular marina operator would be picking up. So we literally just had a meeting Friday with City Council, kind of take the next steps with that new potential owner.
Now, going back to the parking lot,
Yep.
I hate to say it like that, but how do you reconfigure that for the next 5-10 years?
Well, so you hire a good civil engineer to figure out how is the most efficient way to flow traffic in and out. You know, there are a lot of buses down there that bring a lot of school kids in for those tours. A huge amount of trailers, as you well know, dropping boats off. So, you know, it's a small area that I think could just be made more efficient with somebody a whole lot smarter than me from a civil engineer standpoint, you know, to reconfigure how things flow there. So, you know, would we pick up 50 parking spots? I don't know what it would look like, but I do think we could pick up something just by making a better use of that property.
Now, for the record, Mayor, does the revenue of the shared parking lot goes to Mgjd and the restaurant?
Correct.
Okay. And for the residents, who paid for the parking, well, obviously the property, and paid for its renovation? What benefits do they get?
Well, so the residents, we just have a new public dock that they're going to be able to fish and kayak and crab and sit or do whatever they want. So that was great. Dedicated resident spots that'll be there forever. You know, 16 of them right now. Hopefully more as we continue this conversation with the new marina operator. You know, so the marina was bought by the city in 1999 to create citizen access, not just resident, but citizen access to the water. So you know, we will certainly honor that. We've got a huge boat ramp there. We've got, you know, getting only 5 acres. It's kind of like the island, 7 miles long. You can only pack so many people on it. But we just need to be smart about the efficient use of the property. And to me, that's where I think we've got some opportunities to reconfigure at some point that whole property.
What is your definition of citizens?
Well, if you read what the referendum said in 1999, it was citizen access to the water. Everybody wants to say, well, it was resident only, and I'm 100% resident because I am one.
Right.
But it was really for providing another access point for folks that may not have access to the water. Boat ramp, boat rental, eco tours, other things that are there that provide a lot of amenities for citizens, renters, short-term rentals, people in Mount Pleasant, Albandale, Pleasantville, wherever. But again, it's 5 acres, Quintin, that can only fit so many people when you're trying to balance golf carts and residents and trailers and buses bringing the kids for the eco tours. So, again, it's just like short-term rental conversation we just had, is trying to thread that needle of what makes sense for everybody. Again, you're not going to make everybody happy, but how can we set it up so that we can make the best use of that property?
What's going to be that balance? I know it's a simplistic question.
No, and that's the question. And to me, the balance is, this new potential marina operator that's coming in, has a little bit different business model in a boat club type setup where, the boats are on the water, not on trailers in the parking lot. And that would significantly change the dynamics at the marina, if that marina operator gets these leases and if he puts the boat, club in place here. So I'm anxious to try some of those things, Quintin, to see, okay, if you put a boat club type scenario at our marina, how many trailers does that take off property? Well, a car, truck, and a trailer take up at least 2 parking spots.
Sure.
So I think about, okay, how do you balance for the restaurant? 2 parking spots is pretty critical, and to keep the turn going. Right. So those trailers typically come for a number of hours. The restaurant needs churn.
Sure.
To keep you're in the business. That. They need churn in a parking spot to keep turning. Fairly regularly. So again, hard answer to your question, or hard question to answer is, I'm not sure what that mix is, because if we could pull some of the trailers out of the property, that would open up a whole lot more parking for everybody involved, whether it's the store, whether it's the restaurant, whether it's our new public dock, or whatever else may wind up down there.
What else would actually wind up down there?
I hope nothing. 5 acres, very tight property.
Right.
Great new restaurant that's getting ready to open. Again, part of what we tried to do down there is start paring back some of the commercial activity to give us those 16 resident parking spots back and that public dock back. So those are the things, Quintin, from a city perspective that we can do to try to help alleviate some of the crunch that's down there.
The Palm Republic. News 2 reported that this 7 days ago, quote, some Alva Palms residents are expected to, quote, declare independence from South Carolina as they look to form, quote, the Palm Republic, unquote. It stemmed from what a small group opposed Governor Henry McMaster's decision to close beaches at the height of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. The effort by former and current leaders on the Alva Palms, including former Mayor Jimmy Carroll and current Councilman Blair Hahn, says that the decision is to protect what they call illegal action from the state. They include beach parking and other traffic-related issues by the South Carolina Department of Transportation. You told News 2, quote, the city of the Alva Palms is in no way involved with the Palm Republic. Our council and I continue to be focused on collaborative relationships and seeking solutions that benefit residents and visitors. But let me ask you this, Mayor. Since Councilman Hahn is allegedly involved with the Republic, isn't this a conflict of interest?
I think you might need to ask him that question. Because I do want to be very clear, the city has nothing to do with this at all, and I stand by my statement. My approach, and we talked about this earlier in this interview, is to have good partnerships and relationships at all levels, whether it's Mount Pleasant across the street, or Sullivan across the way, or whomever, at a state level, state legislator level. You can see on my whiteboard, a couple of my to-dos are keep conversations going with the regional mayors, keep conversations going with our state representatives. We've had great meetings with the DOT leadership in the first 5 months of being the mayor. That's where I want to focus, and that's where I'm going to focus, and to create these partnerships that help us get to a good spot. Because we need everybody, and everybody needs us. It's a two-way street, Quintin. So, while I'm a not agree with the approach. I do agree that we need to do something about Senate Bill S40 that happened a couple of years ago. But that's through legislative action to me, not what's happening.
Now, do you believe Governor McMaster was wrong in signing this particular bill?
That's up to him. That's his decision point. Where the Palm Republic and others are coming, it was definitely a slap in the face to a home rule type environment. Totally understand that and agree with that. But again, very different than my approach, Quintin, to try and create relationships and collaboration and get to a good end result without a lawsuit always being your lead card.
Now, immediately following the vote to eliminate the committee structure that was passed 7-2, there was a discussion about the state, the DOT, and hiring a lawyer that has determined the city's best course of action to, quote, hold the state and legislators accountable for their actions.
Mm-hmm.
But what about you all's actions?
From what standpoint?
What happened back in 2020?
Say more.
Yeah, I mean, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I'm guessing you may be talking about the roadblock we put up or elimination of parking for a very short time frame. We felt like we were doing, easy to look at a rearview mirror at this point through the lens of COVID for sure, but we felt like we were doing what we needed to do to protect our residents.
Okay.
So we eliminated parking on one side of Palm for a very short time period. That's reinstated and everybody, back to the 1,700 spots to where we were. We put up the roadblocks, for a very short time frame while Governor McMaster had the beaches closed. That's all we did. We were reacting to that and again trying to protect our residents. So
now, should the Isle Palm City Council just ask the Attorney General to issue an opinion and save the taxpayers' money?
It's a path.
Okay. But then, would hiring a lawyer certainly help or hurt your budget deficit?
We don't have a budget deficit. We are going to finish the year in a very strong scenario. So, from a budget standpoint, something like this, Quintin, if you went and got an opinion from an attorney, maybe it's a $10,000 number. I don't know whether it's going to be relatively small in the grand scheme of things. We're going to end the year with a great financial result this year and have another one projected for next year, hopefully. So sometimes you choose to spend money on things like this just to see where it may go. It may go far, may not go far, but you don't know until you spend that first opinion request.
And speaking of opinions, let me go back to the committee really quickly. I know that you all said this quote, we're going to have to figure out a way to, we're going to need some people in smaller groups to delve more in depth in certain issues. Well, if this is the case, Mayor, why get rid of committees?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that's going to be the exception rather than the rule, to have a smaller group. Again, I think it's going to be very topic specific question, where we're going to say, why don't you 3, 2, 5 people go look at this, go study this a little bit deeper, and come back to us. We'll continue to use the Planning Commission for sure. That's great group of ours that's already in place. Sure. And again, I hope it's the exception that we have to put a task force together of council members from this new workshop environment.
Now, what quorum issues would this group or committee eliminate?
Mm-hmm. So right now, if you think about all of our committees, except one of these meetings, are 3-member committees. So 2's a quorum. So if you do away with committees, you got 9 council members, and now 5's a quorum.
Right.
So I'm not trying to get around quorum or Freedom of Information Act or anything at all. I'm just, again, trying to make it more efficient to get the business of the city done.
Well, to be continued, but the battery's running out. I had so many more follow-up questions. I love doing that.
You know where I am.
Right. Well, thank you again, Mayor Phillip Pounds, for your time. Quintin, close-ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Good to see you again.
Likewise.